Good evening. We're here for the Joint Plan Work Group. It's November 15, 2023. It is approximately 6:37 in the evening. I believe everybody, all the members of the work group and council are present, either remotely or in person, with the exception of Dr. Moore, who will be here shortly, hopefully within the next 5 or 10 minutes or so. So looking at our agenda, item number 1, call the meeting to order. I believe I've done that. Item number 2 on the agenda is consideration of key performance indicators for Section 6. We have exchanged drafts for consideration. I believe we all have copies of them in front of us. Normally, I would say let's just start at the top. If it's all right with you, what I'd like to do is we have a few questions about some of the proposed language that you guys have put forward. We'd like to start there so that we can kind of gain that information, and then hopefully Dr. Moore will be here before we start getting into the specific KPIs. Is that all right?
That works.
Okay. Dr. Shafty, do you remember where those were that we talked about?
The first one, we had a question on indicator 11. So I'll frame it and then tell you what our question is and what your intent was with that. Many subject areas are covered in indicator 11, but then broken out in 12, 13, 14, 15. So we just wanted to have an understanding of how the content areas with a single growth point was identified for indicator 11, but then separate levels of proficiency in 12, 13, 14, and 15.
Sure. So, and maybe you can help enlighten us on this, but we were looking at the dashboard. I think that there was data on, I don't know, we didn't know if like the social studies, science, math, et cetera, was repetitive of the end of course exams, or if it was a different measure in and of itself. So indicators 11 and 12 were specifically focused on the end of course exam performance. And if there were any other way that the district measure proficiencies on, in social studies, science, reading, math, et cetera, we just wanted to break that out. But if those indicators are just reflective of end of course exams, then it's possible that they're repetitive.
So I think it might be helpful for us to maybe respond to those with our data and accountability, because I also don't have the full scope of understanding, but I see civics end of course and US history end of course, which is a little bit contradictory to indicator 14, which would be social studies. So do we want content-specific indicators? Is that the intent of the proposed?
It was making sure that the subject area in each grade level was captured, because I think social studies is measured in, I think civics is only offered in a couple of grades, and history is only offered in a couple of grades, but then in elementary school, it's only social studies, that sort of thing. So really, we're just looking to make sure that it's captured for the grade level, however it's measured in the grade level.
And you wanted to separate the end of course exams because we have the civics and we have several end of course exams. And like in elementary, we'll just have the language arts and the math and the subject areas. So you want the specifics in each of those areas?
That was the intent.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. I believe in the last meeting, we were saying that we didn't want to have someone to come behind us and have to imply, and that's why it's broken down so that it's clear for whoever in the future.
So
Yeah.
the measure will be end-of-course exams where we have end-of-course exams. And in the classes where we don't have end-of-course exams, we have to look at how is achievement measured.
If it's measured, yes, exactly.
It's measured right.
Yeah, so I think it would be maybe more efficient if we break those down, just because in indicator 11, you have ELA FSA, which will be, I think, 3rd through 10th grade. So you're not end of course in that one.
Right.
Got it.
Just end of course, whether it
Okay.
is end of course.
So I'd like to do our due diligence and return something
Sure.
to you for 11 through 15, now that we have a better understanding of what the intent is.
And then you could see it in black and white, you know, what it will look like. That makes sense to me. That would take care of that.
It says statewide assessments. Aren't they doing away with statewide assessments?
No, that's the correct term now, because they the proposal had proficiency on, it had the old language, so we updated it. The state recognizes everything, FCAT, FSA, whatever we're calling it, as the statewide assessment program.
Yeah.
So it captures what probably will change in the future again by saying the statewide assessment program.
Yeah, we've gone through
Okay.
FCAT, FSA, now FAST, Florida Assessment of Student Thinking. So we just say statewide assessment, because it changes about every
Common Core, every governor or
Yeah.
president.
I'm trying to think when we had FSA, FCAT to FSA, it was around 5 to 7 years, and they changed it. So it's usually around that time.
Yeah.
But that's a good question, Rashawn. Do we have anything else on that? Jean, I think if we get that clear, that will help.
And that's going to take somebody other than the folks we have here today.
Yeah, we're going to have
Yes.
to go through that on the back end of Power BI, yeah.
Well, we can go, I guess, back to indicator 1 then, unless there was something else.
So just so that I'm clear, Dr. Chapta, you'll come back with proposed revisions for 11 through 15?
I will, I'll separate them out because science is in here, but science is specific grade levels.
Right.
Um,
Biology.
So grouping them together, you have end of course,
It's just going to look different in terms of what the categories and grades are.
Yeah.
yes.
But it'll be clear once you see it. All right, what's next? What's our next question on that one? That was a main one.
Can you share acceleration? So you have a middle school acceleration indicator and then high school acceleration captured as well. So are you wanting,
In which indicators?
Which one are you on? Sorry.
3, indicator 3, 4, and 4 deal with acceleration?
I think a lot of this, the work, or the NAACP members of the work group, what we did was we looked at Power BI and saw how it was tracked and then tried to measure it and then tried to copy it into an indicator. And I think that middle school, at least however we looked at it on Power BI, middle school was separate from high school. So that was the intention there.
And you'll notice that with a lot of these, is that we're trying to track
Sure.
what's already being tracked.
Okay.
Right, so that's the source.
So I think those were our kind of background clarifying questions, so we can start with 1 and progress through.
Okay.
All right. So number 1 has to do with kind of the main item, right, which is the graduation gap graduation rate gap between African American and white students.
So for the IRC-NAACP, I think that this is an edit throughout that we can address now, is removing the measurement from each high school and instead measuring at the district. So I guess we wanted to know why the each school language was removed.
Because when you're saying for the graduation rate,
Yes, our proposal was the district in each high school will measure, or in each school, will measure indicators throughout. And I guess a proposal of the district was just to measure on a district-wide level only.
and then who was asking, was it, who was asking about why each school?
So
We're asking.
Yeah, we're just trying to get insight into why that language was problematic, to measure it at each individual school as
Oh,
opposed
yeah.
to the district overall as well as each school.
So I know Dr. Moore has thoughts on this, and I don't want to misspeak because I do not know this information as well as he does, but 2 high schools, right?
Oh, there he is. Well, just thing I wanted to say, when we get the state, when we get the state information, we'll take a look at Sebastian Vero and then Indian River Charter High School, and then give us an overall rate, but they also rate it by school.
I just let a court reporter in.
That's on the record.
I'm gonna go get my, oh, there it is.
Do you want that?
We get 2 for the price of 1?
Let's take a 5-minute break.
We'll go off the record for 5 minutes. Thank you.
So there's another card.
I was being helpful, let the.
So when we get that from the state, we have it overall and then by each high school, you know what I mean? That's how it looks, but it just gives you the Indian River County. But
He was
when,
Bogart in your spot.
well, when they come, they'll say Indian River County
got that
state average, but then
Exactly.
we can look at each high school and see where we are. You know, as a Sebastian River High School principal, I'd
Yeah,
always
because
look.
we're looking on the dashboard, and so obviously we have the ability to drill down.
Right, right. And I always wanted to make sure I beat Bureau. And look at, 9 years I was there.
Yeah.
Nice. Dr. Sheffield, can you remind me, on the dashboard, is it advanced reports? It's different now.
Are you from the main page?
You're looking at the wrong,
Oh, am I looking at the wrong thing?
yeah.
Oh, I'm on New Year's Schools.
From the main page, there's a quick link that's access data.
This is all.
So you can look on each of these. Got it. So for this one, it would be this one.
I go on this, I do go on this quite a bit, and then I do go back with Brian and look at the other stuff. Yeah, I've seen this. This is a good one.
Yours is going to be hard to read because it's not in, you don't have the.
I know.
All right, we're on indicator one, which is the graduation rate gap between African American and white students. And the question is, why has the district work group proposed removing the and each high school? Dr. Moore, I was going to let you speak to that.
Well, welcome to the meeting. And each high school, so just looking at the number, I think Sebastian has about 50, 53, 54 graduates. So the impact or the rate of change based on a small number would have significant impact, whether it's positive or negative, but not necessarily a true indicator in terms of progress. I think ultimately you're looking at the district's graduation rate. So with just 2 high schools, one having significantly almost 3 times as many black students, it's just a more reliable number, to be honest with you. Does that capture? Just walking into the conversation, but based on what you just asked me, that would be my response.
So it's only 54?
It depends on year, so don't quote me, but it's not over 60 and it's not under 50 from year to year. That's Sebastian.
Correct. When I was there, Mr. Brown, it was, our African-American population would range between 9 and 12%, so with a graduating class of 400, something like that. So that was about the average at that time. And I was just explaining, when we get the graduation rate, they'll go by county. In fact, charter high school is included in that, isn't it? I mean, when they look at the whole state, our average.
So the county charter school, off the top of my head, has under 10 students.
Right.
So it's not necessarily part, it is part of the total district
Right,
number,
right, okay.
but it would never be a reported number.
Correct.
Because it's
Under 10.
It's under 10.
Yes.
We also have virtual schools. Currently, our students do now qualify to graduate from IR prep, whereas before they would refer back to their traditional school because it wasn't able to give a diploma. Now they can, but that's also a small number. And any homeschool kids kids that are involved in our virtual school.
Virtual school, yeah.
Not homeschool. Homeschool, we don't get the benefit of those students.
But wouldn't that be something that the schools are already tracking, the high schools? They would notice and have their data.
I don't know, we have their data. So if you look at Sebastian River High School's, their graduation rate last year, which is not the 23 school year, the 22 school year, because graduation rates are a year late. So the district's graduation rate was 95. The graduation rate for black students at Sebastian was 100%, and at Vero, it was 89. In comparison to 18-19, the black graduation rate for the system was, 84?
I think it's 81.
81. So 81 for the district to currently the graduation rate for black students is 90. So someone was to ask me, is that the best improvement in that time period? I'd have a really good answer.
I'm not understanding why district, having it aggregated is better, because the purpose of the indicator and to have the indicator disaggregated is to provide a greater detail about the subgroup of the indicator and how they're affected differently. So why would we have both the graduation rate for the district instead of looking at Vero Beach High School and Sebastian High School and being able to compare the two, as opposed to putting all that information together? It kind of hides, like, let's say for instance, Sebastian's graduation rate was 50% and Vero's was 85, but it's all together. And so now it's coming up at like 70. We don't really have the data necessary to look and say, okay, well, let's see what what Vero's doing better than Sebastian, or that Sebastian may need more resources for or can improve in that area. So I'm voting no for just district-wide. I think each school is better if we're trying to actually look at the programming and strengths and weaknesses of the schools.
So it's not a matter of it being better, it's a matter of it being more reliable and accurate to what we're trying to accomplish. So when you're looking at the county as a whole, that's who's trying to obtain unitary status, the school district of Indian River County. Ultimately, the only way to is to look at, where students graduate from, which is going to be majority Vero Beach Senior High School, followed by Sebastian River High School. That makes up the totality of the graduation rate. So, I mean, once again, you can cut this apple any which way you want. The data speaks for itself, and it will continue to speak for itself in terms of its rate of improvement.
I think in terms of accuracy, the language here is, just to be clear, it's both. So it's the district and each school, right? So if we're able to have measures that look at both the district and each school and the percentage of improvement and reduction in the gap along the way, I mean, I don't think there's any better way to see the accuracy if you have both. I would agree. I don't want one or the other, but I would like to see both so that we can drill down on.
So Sebastian being at 100% last year, they'd have to maintain that.
Yeah, well,
Just the achievement gap.
until
No.
the achievement gap is eliminated. So,
Then we don't need to talk about Sebastian because it's been eliminated, because it's at 100.
It's a negative achievement gap.
So that one, so if we just want to look at Vero, then that's fine too.
well, yeah,
I
but this
mean-
is the indicator. And when we measure,
you
yes,
would-
it'll show that. I agree with you. It'll reflect that. But these are just the indicators.
But you would want to talk about Sebastian, right? Because you would want the court to know how well you're doing at Sebastian, that you've
Don't leave
already
it out.
achieved it. Like, this is an
Highlight it.
opportunity to also highlight your strengths.
And I don't see it as a negative, because if I'm a novice and don't have a clue, it's apples and oranges because of the population. And if you need both of them, the district saying, okay, Sebastian, we're doing well. But Vero, we could do some improvement, but if you combine them, you just get a general understanding of what you're looking at. As a novice, you, Dr. Moore, being in it every day, and other educators involved, you could understand it readily versus somebody looking at it from the outside.
And the goal, basically, when you look at the indicator, will decrease the gap in graduation rates between African-American and white students by 1 percentage point each year until the gap is eliminated. So we're just basically looking at Vero, and you're looking at a 1 percentage point increase. What was Vero again?
89.
89? Okay.
No, Vero last year was, thank you.
89.
Because if you do 89 and then 100, your overall would be around 94.5.
Well, overall was 92, because there's 100, and it's 3 times as many at Vero Beach.
Yeah, it's hard. It's different.
But on the other indicators, I think we would be kind of being the same, because the other indicators say something like each school shall maintain a professional learning person who will guide the mentors, who will do this, and that's on each school and each principal to be able to keep that going. So if we're looking at graduation rates, I think it would give Sebastian some bragging rights, and Vero perhaps, okay, we got a little bit of work, or if they're coming up, it's bragging rights as well. But, with the Florida population growing, what happens when we add another high school? Are we still just to focus on the one? But I don't think it'll be too terrible of a thing to say each high school and to look at each one, because we should be, I don't see the negative in adding both, so.
Mr.
Just
Seymour, you were at
district and
Vero.
high school.
Any comments? What do you think, buddy? I mean, obviously, population's different. We all know that. Do you see 1% increase as an issue as far as each year making it happen? I was there a long time ago as dean, not principal. No.
What, as principal or what
I
position?
mean, I'm thinking 1% each year is not a great goal. I mean, I don't know if the schools they had a choice on graduation coaches and other positions, but man, I know their senior year, the counselors are working from day one on where are they for graduation? Are they going, what do they need at the test, the ELC, whatever, you know?
Well, it's, you know, a lot to consider, you know, especially when you think about what COVID did and what our responsibilities were as administrators. So we would need help. I don't think we could just focus on those numbers alone. No, I don't. It's a lot of variables. So I think the district as a whole has done a great job based on what I think I had accomplished as a principal there. In between that time and now, I think Dr. Moore has made some substantial gain. And I
Yeah,
think
we've
that
had
is to be
gain, that's for
considered.
sure, yeah. And a graduation rate, yeah, for sure.
What is the increase in the graduation rate currently at Vero, year over year? Is 1%
For all students or a cert?
the achievement gap, in terms of the achievement gap?
I remember when I'm just talking years ago, GYAC opened, what was the African-American graduation rate? Because Dr. Hudson said that.
It was
It's around-
13%.
What was it?
13%.
Was it 13 or 30? Why do I keep thinking
It was
30?
low.
It was low. Okay, so there's been a significant increase there.
And let me just say with that, because of the joint collaboration with the college with TRIO programs
Oh, yeah.
and with the GYAC, that helped establish a lot of assistance
Sure.
with the graduation
It's-
rates for African-American
Our community
students.
partnerships help a lot.
Well, for the males is what I was saying. For
Okay.
African-American males, the ratio was 13%.
Okay. Overall, it was around 38, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously a lot of increases.
So in 1819, the graduation rate for black students at Vero Beach Senior High School is 81%.
And
The last graduation rate we had, which is the 22 graduating class, is 90. So at the end of the day, we're not, we meet the metrics no matter which way you want to report it in terms of last year. This
Yeah.
year, you know, an example, I mean, Sebastian, just statistically, it's gonna, if one less student graduates, it goes down maybe to 97%. And then a variance of one student, you don't, and I don't know what the criteria is to meet the indicator, but the district's graduation rate can, both as a whole, can drastically increase. The gap from the district can drastically decrease, but Sebastian can go down based on the number of students. So if 2 less students graduate at Vero Beach Senior High School and they go to 92, statistically way above the state average. Like, how will you do that? But 10 more students at Vero Beach, or 15 more students at Vero Beach graduate, Vero Beach goes up, the district goes up. So maybe my
And-
struggle is, what's the criteria to pass the indicator? 'Cause
Yeah,
you
that was
have
supposed to say, is
this
it the indicator?
Three-prong improvement rate,
It's the indicator.
where the district ultimately improves.
So that's why it's important to have have it disaggregated, right? Because in this instance, if, let's say that 2 less at Sebastian graduates and Vero Beach High School increases or whatever, like there's an argument that, you know, Sebastian was here, but 2 less. Like, it's, the more clear it is when it comes to the data, the easier it is for the district to show, like, it's not like the district is deficient, it's just 2 less people or whatever. Like, that's why it's important. But if you have it all together, the district number then it could appear on the surface like the district is deficient in some area, as opposed to having the two schools and showing that, hey, we were at 100% at one point and two went down. So you kind of prove like what you just discussed kind of supports having the district number, but also the different schools, because the different schools tells the story of the progress.
But the statement itself,
It says,
the indicator, you're not meeting the indicator.
Ms.
So-
Sebastian,
Well, I
would you-
think, I mean, it
It's the
does say,
indicator. It's the
to the
indicator.
extent parity has not been realized. So you're looking to decrease the gap where it exists.
So for 2 years in a
So are
row,
you,
for 2 years in a row, Sebastian Rivers had a negative achievement gap.
No,
Yeah.
I'm just, the only thing I'm not
Yeah.
arguing anything. The only point I'm making
Yeah.
is
He
because
said
of the
achievement.
size.
Yeah.
It's not a both and. It should
Yeah.
be, this is what the district's rate is.
Yeah.
Can we provide, and would we ultimately provide? I mean, the whole world can see the graduation rates. You're looking on a public-facing dashboard right now. So it's not a matter of not sharing the information. It's a matter of accurately assessing what the joint plan is asking for. And the way you do that is to look at the graduation rate. But ultimately, provide the data for both specific schools, yes. I just think it needs to be,
so you're thinking that you're thinking that the aggregate number makes it easier on you, basically. That's what it sounds like. Like you feel like the aggregate number is more of like a cheat code for you, as opposed to the two schools. Like that's harder to achieve for you.
no, because Sebastian's at 100%, and Sebastian is gonna be at 100% or 98% when this data comes out, and Vero Beach will be, so.
I think the issue is, we're talking about indicator one, but this permeates throughout, right? So this goes through other
Every
indicators. And
indicator.
so
Yeah.
we're setting, we're talking about one indicator that has two schools, and that's, I hear that's your concern. But our greater concern is that where that's not the case, and even when that is the case, I mean, I don't think thinking about a problem that doesn't exist is not going to move the ball forward, right? We're talking about a school that is already at
100%.
100%. So, you know,
And the charter is in that. He's saying that the charter is not in that number, but the charter is in that number
statewide, it's
for
an
the
average.
district.
In what number?
In the district graduation rate number, the charter school is in that number.
And we wanna hold them accountable as well.
Right, but come on, Dr. Moore.
I'm just, we wanna hold them accountable as well.
Let's be serious. I served 2 years on that committee. I know better than that, like, seriously.
All
But that's
9 of
why
the
it's best to have it disaggregated.
And they are public schools.
Yeah, they are.
Right.
Do we add
So that
something?
we
Yeah.
can see. But the district doesn't really have control
No,
over
we don't.
charters. That's more state governed.
And if we look at it holistically, going back to what Jody said, as we move through this, I think we are focusing on a possibility or this or that in this particular one. And if I'm the judge, and you said you could see it on the dashboard, but if the documents that we present to the judge shows both, and then the overall, that's a win-win. If I'm the judge, you know, maybe I'm looking at it, but it's a win-win for the district. But it also allows, as Mashawn said, all the variables, well, what Eric said, all the variables can be added into the process. Because if we look at ESC and all those different ones, now you go to playing a chess match, because you got ESC, you got all kind of variables thrown into that 100%.
Yeah, if they are black.
True.
each year until the achievement gap is eliminated or.
But doesn't that indicator seem to indicate that once the achievement gap is eliminated, then that school is done for that year? But if they come in next year at 50% or whatever, then we're still looking at it.
What was the percentage of white students graduate from Sebastian River High School?
Stand by.
What do you want, the percentage?
Of white students that graduated from Vero Beach High School last year, like, or the year before, whenever we had the 100% black graduation rate?
Well, we had 100% black in 2020 and 2021, and it was 96% of the white population. And in 2021, 2022, 100% of the black population, and again, 98% of the white population.
Let's,
I know, I'm thinking the variable, what we could add here. Until the achievement gap is eliminated, or,
sorry, Doc.
I'm just thinking if it's the wording here, like, each year until the achievement gap is eliminated, or the black and white, because we wanted to reduce it until the achievement gap was limited.
So I can't, I don't know if it was Tony or Rashawn, can't spend a significant amount of time arguing about something I know we already meet and will continue to meet.
The
Yes,
other,
but-
And I think my concern is the creating an indicator that won't be met. And what I hear you saying is provide that information and we can talk through it and say, okay, well, here is the reality, the two-student scenario. But I just get a little lump in my throat when we're creating an indicator where mathematically there may be opportunities where it's not meeting what is clearly stated in the indicator and you don't get credit for that. So since we don't have a, you know,
But it-
what's the
but it will-
passing score is probably a better question.
But it will be met if Vero's graduation rate, if you do each school, Vero's graduation rate goes up 1%, it's met. If Sebastian is at 100, it's met. You know, if you do district-wide and you're including
Well, it's all three.
including the charter school in the calculation, which it will be, that's disingenuous. Like that's misleading. That's not accurate. And I don't think 1% is much, really. Like
Doc,
you
is it
said,
that you,
in 3 years, it went up 9% for Vero, right?
No, well, I don't disagree with what you're saying. It has gone up 9, but go back 4 years and go and look where we started this work to where we are now. Increasing it now because the gap really is so small, in one place it's a negative gap, is harder to do. So,
are you concerned with the small population at Sebastian that will alter this drastically if it's 1 or 2 students?
yes.
Or
Yes.
kinda, but overall, that would be identified in itself.
Yeah.
That would be a self-fulfilling prophecy, that, okay, we lost 2 students out of the cohort. I see what you're saying, but I'm just saying, overall, I see it as a win-win for the district, personally.
Yeah. I don't really see that as an issue either because, I mean, it's not realistic to expect the graduation rate to like consistently be 100%.
Even if, let's say, Sebastian this year coming in is at 98%, and
95 is really good.
I'm just saying, it says
I know.
that, well, and obviously they decreased 2%, but still, there's probably not an achievement gap there because at this point, I think you said blacks were at 100 and what were whites at Sebastian River High School last year? I forget.
90.
something.
Yeah, 100 at
96.
Sebastian, 89 at Vero.
Do we need to put like a number on that?
No, because it says the extent.
Yeah.
By 1 percentage point. Okay, so if Sebastian
Do you
drops
wanna
2
make it more
percentage
than
points.
1%?
What, honey?
Do you want to make it?
Hey,
Let's move to indicator 2, please.
but if, let's say Sebastian goes to 98%, they didn't increase, you know what I mean? they kept it, so, but they still have the achievement gap closed because they were higher, you know? So that won't be an issue.
All right. Indicator 2,
All right.
I think,
Repeat that one.
I think
yeah.
indicator 2, I think it was the same change, but now we're, and you missed this, Dr. Moore, but we had a conversation, is this, no, this is not what we
yet.
talked about it, okay. So indicator 2, I think it's the same, but we're talking about middle schools now, that we would measure it by each middle school.
And the district.
And the district. We would measure at the district and we would measure at each middle school.
And again, the point for doing each school is just to see how each school is performing, right? It goes back to when we talked about the teachers. Like you could have one school doing extremely well and then another school that is struggling. Like this is an opportunity for us to look at the data and say, okay, so how can we better support this school if this is the school that is struggling in this area? So like, yeah, we're reviewing data, but also looking at to see how we can have some added support. So if it's a middle school that kids are struggling in, maybe the NAACP can reach out to the community and say, hey, these students are needing help at so-and-so middle school. And then that's the added support when it comes to like the academics and stuff. So this is definitely an opportunity to see where the district is doing an amazing job and where we can add some support to the district.
So are you saying then if we don't increase 4 percentage points in each school, we have not met this criteria?
Right.
Why did you choose 4? I mean, what was the basis for that?
It was based on the gap that exists now and how long it would take to eliminate that gap. And so all of these numbers were just, and they're subject to conversation by the work group, but they're proposals to do so within, I think we chose a reasonable, I don't, was it?
And then one of the
Within
meetings
5
we had
years.
prior, I'm sorry. One of the meetings we had prior, we had discussed that we didn't want, like we know the gap is large, but we didn't want to choose like unattainable numbers, basically. But we didn't want to make it so small that it's going to take 20 years just to achieve, the decrease.
We've had, I'm sorry, go
So,
ahead.
if I could, you looked at the gap that existed in the district's numbers,
We
And by
actually
school.
looked at.
and by school.
By school,
Yeah.
but the requirement is for the district and each school.
Right.
So you just kind of average them out.
Depending on which one it is, for this one, I don't have the numbers in front of me,
Okay.
but it was
Should've brought
based
mine.
on the numbers being similar.
I got you. Okay.
So it was all drawn from the dashboard.
Gotcha.
And the achievements that have been achieved and attained year over year, and what seemed to the work group, well, to us as being reasonable and attainable.
So I don't think we have any issues with a 4% increase. But if it improves, I don't know, let's say it improves 8 this year.
You get credit.
Um,
2-year count. 2 years.
And only 1 the following year. It's a 9 percentage point increase over 2 years, so it's 8 percentage. So
Yeah.
that's the good faith dialogue that needs to take place.
And that's why, so we didn't want to have, based on, other comments, we at first were like, oh, let's put an end date year, like, so we get achievement by this time, but we also know the district's concerns about setting a timeline far out, so we want to be able to measure ASAP. So this was our proposal of basically exactly that, working in good faith, so we see that there's forward progress and that parity is achievable.
We've had great growth, as as most people know when you look at this, with middle school acceleration, and that's because we're really working hard about putting kids in these classes. And so from 18, 19, 56% to 21, 22, 74%, and what possibly could go up when we get our next set of scores,
So we'll be in the 90s for middle school acceleration as a whole, and the only way to drive that number up is to get black students the opportunity to be in those courses.
Right.
That was the only way to drive that number up. So I am beyond confident that that number is going to skyrocket. You know, this data is lagged for a different reason. It's lagged because the state hasn't released the acceleration courses for the schools this year. We just know what algebra, we know what it is internally.
And in order to do that, and you've talked about this, Mr. Brown, and getting those kids in algebra in middle school to get ready for what you need to do is for the 4 levels of math in the high school. And some kids and parents were a little concerned about that. You know, are they going to be okay, blah, blah. But it was a pretty good success rate. And, from one year to the last 2 years, we went up 9%. So hopefully, but I mean, again, that's good faith. We could go up 4% one year and then next year maybe 3%. So I think we have to look at that overall and getting our kids in the right classes. So, and with support.
And as Adrian said, Doc, what's the norm, rolling trends of 3 or 5 years?
3? No, 5, I'm sorry, 5.
Yeah, 3 to 5.
So indicator 2 is fine. Indicator 3,
Just needs to add the same language that was inadvertently excluded in that one.
you mean to the extent thing?
To the extent and at each high school, so the same as copying from one. to
Now, I
extent.
do, so the 5%, once again, the only way to improve the overall numbers is to give every kid the opportunity to be in those courses, which
Yeah.
we have done.
And that's reflected in these as well.
Now, where does it say, oh, indicator 4 and indicator 3, we're measuring the same thing. So the students in advanced placement and IB courses are in fact how you calculate the acceleration courses. So it's the same thing.
For a novice, can you just explain that to me, how that breaks down?
So to create your score, the state score for acceleration courses, you're looking at, those are the courses, you're looking at advanced placement courses, you're looking at IB courses, and you're looking at dual enrollment courses, and you're looking at the rigorous certification courses, which the state parallels as part of that. So you're looking at the same criteria. It's the same, it's basically saying the same thing.
I think that with indicator, and, you know, maybe that we can just, I think that we could probably find a way to combine indicators 4 and 5, but with 3 and
3 and
4.
Yeah.
But with 4, that's where we saw, I think, one of the biggest achievement gaps was the performance between black and white students on those particular exams.
Which
And
exams were they?
IB
The IB
and
exams.
AP exams, or placement in the courses.
Yeah, but you have to look at the totality of the score. So I
Yeah.
refuse to tell a counselor, you have to put this student into a IB course or AP course, even though dual enrollment is better for him, or he or she wants dual enrollment, or they want the CTE course.
So this is performance on the school, on the tests.
That are already in the
So the
program.
people who are already in the classes and that take the tests, the passing rates, we're looking at the achievement gaps in the passing rates of those courses in particular.
It just depends on who's in those courses. Because at IB at Sebastian, you're maybe talking about a handful of kids.
Right.
Okay.
But that's also certificate now at Sebastian, too.
So maybe we can come up with something, because we're, yeah. 'Cause
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at the performance of acceleration courses, which the state defines as those courses and a few others,
No, I think we're specifically focused on IB and AP because that gap was so high.
I have some mixed feelings on that.
yeah. 'Cause,
I really do. And I had my own kids at AP at Vero Beach High School, and obviously had the IB program at Sebastian. Sometimes kids didn't get the IB diploma. Now we have it with certificates, which I didn't have then, so they could go into certain classes instead of the whole program. I mean, you still have universities saying if they went through the IB program, sometimes not even getting the diploma, they look at them even closer. So maybe they could get a B on the, actual grade, but they don't get that AP score they need. It's still, I mean, if they're in there not doing well or failing and getting below a certain grade, I understand pulling them out, but even having that class and doing it, some kids just don't do well on, have you taken an AP test in the last few years or IB? Very, very, very challenging. I can look at them, I don't take them.
And
But
she's right, and
My kids didn't get all their AP credits, but that class was great for them, so.
from a systems perspective, we have drastically increased dual enrollment and partnership
Right.
with Indian River State College just because it is the exact same credit as the AP or IB course that you may not get credit for if you don't pass that one exam. In addition to that, the state has created another program in which students can get college-level credit in partnership with our local universities, which is creating assessments and courses to be taught in partnership with the community college or the colleges. So there's AP, IB may not in Florida be sustainable programs because of the being, just the number of students who are participating goes down and down every year, because giving students access to the same college credit in an environment where they could be more successful is just what we should be doing. So having this criteria almost goes against one of our major strategies to get students into college with an AA and put them in Indian River State College, where if they go right now, or this year, or last year, they get to go for free. So we're turning out first-time college students at a level we've never had before, because we're saying that IB course or AP course may not be the best avenue for you. Here's this option.
So I think that we're talking about two different things. So like I see this more as an end-of-course exam. We're talking about the Black students and the white students who are enrolled in IB and AP tests. You get your test scores back at the end of the year. I think the achievement gap at some schools is over 40% on who of those Black students, between the Black students and white students, and who passed those tests. So we're not measuring, like, even if dual enrollment is, like, I think that conversation is for indicator 3. We're looking just at this population. So these are students who are in the same class who are ending up with completely disparate test results.
And you're looking at 2-year-old data, and those students probably, because they didn't have the appropriate avenue for them, they were pushed into courses that they never should have been. So you're trying to correct and hold us accountable for a number when the right answer is to find the course that's right for them. And as time goes on, the number of students in those programs is just going to continue to go down.
It is, certification.
To the same argument we had in indicator 1. But you are capturing every advanced course when you use acceleration for high school, which can be compared in all 67 districts and all high schools across the state, where this number is very specific. And it's just not an accurate representation of the progress of students, because we're strategically saying, hey, you have more options. Don't take this course.
So is
I
it?
I think
that-
you're,
Go ahead, Michelle.
I think you're missing what she's saying.
No,
She's
I
not.
completely-
We're not, the indicator is not looking at the enrollment. If the enrollment goes down where there are 0 Black students in there and it's only white students, then you met it because there's no Black students enrolled. It's about the success of the students in the program, the performance of what is happening in the program. And I mean, I don't understand why there's pushback on it if the students that are enrolled in the program are all set up for success, if they all get the resources and support they need. So, like, it's not about enrollment, it's about performance of who's already enrolled, who elected to go into that program and how they're performing.
I don't know, I disagree. I think enrollment in the program is access, and that's one thing you're trying to measure, access to advanced coursework versus if a senior takes 6 AP classes, I don't know if 6 out of 6 passing the AP exam is going to be reflective of the success of the program or their ability to take a test.
Well, you usually don't even give the data if it's a certain number anyway.
I
so.
keep going back to, and maybe some of these students were pushed maybe where they shouldn't have been, and we're trying to work on that a little bit better, especially with industry certification. But I will still say there are many, many students who maybe didn't pass that AP test or that IB final test to get the IB diploma, but still had a great, they still did well in their grades, they still got, kept up with everything, but again, some may have been in the wrong area, but you talk to people, parents who didn't get the IB diploma, they'll still say it was a great experience for those kids as they moved on. So I understand the gap, and we need to do better on where these kids are going. We've got more options than we used to have. But I could bring in parents now that could say, listen, it still was good.
I think we're avoiding accountability here because I took AP and honestly, I didn't get the support I needed in order to do well on the test. I did well on the test from just me taking the initiative and talking to guidance counselors and other teachers that taught specific AP areas. But if we're gonna just buck every time, like, oh, I don't want to do this area because the district doesn't want to take accountability on giving student support, like the numbers could show a lot of stuff. It could show that Black nor white students are getting the support they need to be successful in these areas. And that's why this is an important indicator, because although we are here with the DSA because of Black students, but we may be able to find that the district is failing all students on certain things.
I don't remember my AP rate, but our IB rate's been pretty good. I know that.
We saw some data that says the achievement gap was not necessarily that African Americans were dropping, but that whites were dropping. So we're piggybacking on what Mashawn said, that's possible that all students are in a quagmire. My question is, with the dashboard, what's the number of African Americans currently in these classes in Sebastian and Vero?
All IB will be Sebastian.
I know, but I'm just saying overall. Is it under 10?
Count of students in IB in one or more advanced course, white 202, Black 27, Hispanic 127, other 14, Asian 16.
Because you have 27,
Okay, IB, okay.
And then-
that's 9 through 12?
IB is just considered 11, 12. They have pre-IB, yeah.
Okay, that's, I was including that.
11, 12 for IB.
And then do you have the pass rate at 53.1% for white and 31.1% for Black?
I used to have that on my phone with, I don't remember the overall IB pass rate last year. I usually get it.
I mean, it did shrink. So if you look at 21-22 school year, it went from 53.4 for white, sorry, and 24.5 for black. And then if you look at 22-23, it increased. So the gap decreased, right? So it went down. The black pass rate went up to 31. So showing improvement, right? I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I think that we're fighting over things.
Because I think that that measure is probably like exactly what you're saying. Like if you have changed the system in the district where you're now pointing students in the direction
We're
of
trying.
classes where they would be a better fit, then enrollment is maybe more appropriate and pass rates would go up as well.
And when I say a better fit, again, I look back, I'm never going to say if, somebody wants to try something, I always say get in there. Now, we want to make sure they're doing well and support as best they can, but then that's where you talk to the parents, say maybe this would be better. But what was the percentage you were looking for on
You
this?
just want to put a kid in the course that he or she is the best fit for. And you're creating indicators in which the human its side of it is not what we would want. You don't want an indicator that says we have to do this or push a kid out of this course. And the example would be, hey, I want IB. My brother did IB. My dad did I want IB, even though I'm being counseled to go to dual enrollment. The kid gets IB. That's what the kid's going to get.
Right.
So
And then give them support. You don't have to push them out if you give them support.
It's about setting kids up for success. And the state says, hey, we're going to look at all of these pathways to give kids advanced coursework. That's what the state says. That's how they grade all schools. The variance of the numbers and the flexibility to provide options for all kids, we're not assessing that. You're only looking at one specific thing, which is a strategy that we continue to provide and have access to, but we've doubled down on providing more CTE courses, which kids graduate and go off and make more money than a teacher.
Oh, yeah, they do.
And they want to take those courses, and we've drastically expanded the offering of those courses. And dual enrollment, where we've partnered with the Indian River State College, and we've quadrupled the offerings that are taking place right next to the IB classroom. It's just one classroom over. You walk in that classroom, and it's college. So it's not assessing the strategy to increase access and success in advanced coursework, where the first indicator is, in fact, doing that.
My concern, Doc, is you had your award ceremony, and you had dual enrollment, and you had kids of color and cosmetology. And, I mean, me at Vero Beach High School, when they integrated, I was taking calculus and trigonometry. And going back to what Mashawn say, support, and if you have a biased individual navigating my child, say you can't do this, so why don't you do dual enrollment, when my child wants to be an engineer, but he needs to be foundationally prepared to be that. But you, for whatever reason, you're shooting him off in the dual enrollment and throwing him, so yeah, he could make all that money as a plumber, he could do this, he could do that, but that's not where his heart is, and he's being stifled at an age where he can matriculate into something better.
Dual enrollment is college.
I know that, that's what I'm saying.
It's not cosmetology. Those aren't the courses that we're talking about. Those are CTE or vocational courses, but they may not lead to a certificate that is captured under the state's ranking. So there's different, that's not at all what we're talking about.
But I'm looking at it, Doc, and I pay attention, You know, like I said, I went to school a couple of days, and when we play games with these programs, and oftentimes, it's African-American kids who miss out, and they don't get into those professions or go into areas that they want to go in,
Yeah.
because the system is set up so that we can succeed as a district. We're going to shoot you over here. And I think that we should, yes, it's not for everybody, but I just gotta,
Because
I think what we're trying to do will serve a purpose.
Yeah,
So,
what
let-
I'm hearing is that black kids are better suited to go for dual enrollment, and we're steering them to dual enrollment. And so therefore, we don't want to have an indicator that look at their performance in these advanced placement and IB. Well, I have two things to say. The first thing is, if I'm trying to go to college for STEM, there are certain honors and AP courses that you need in order to get accepted. And yeah, I can get an AA and then go to any state college, but what if I want to go out of state? You know, what if I want to go to Georgia Tech? What if I want to go to Duke? Secondly, when we talk about these numbers, this is beyond just black students. I have a friend who is white. Her two kids graduated from Sebastian, went through the IB program, went to UF, and struggled in engineering, and I want to say chemistry, because that program at Sebastian was the weaker IB track. So that's why it's important for us to look at the performance, because this goes beyond just how black students are performing, but what is our district doing to support our students, period, when it comes to like these areas? And even with the IB, what track are we on? Is it preparing our best and brightest to be successful? Because yeah, everybody cares about the students that struggle in these classes and can't read, but let's not leave behind our students that should be competing nationally, you know, that we're proud of, and who have, you know, the bandwidth to be successful. Are we also putting resources behind them and ensuring that they're successful? And I think this indicator in itself allows us to look at that and to see how we can rally behind them and support them.
So pretty much everything you said is so drastically incorrect. You would take a student and you would.
So those kids didn't graduate and go to UF and struggle?
Right. If a student would take the dual enrollment course because the IB course or the AP course isn't going to be recognized or honored at the university, you would give them every opportunity to be in what is a college course that once you pass it, ENC 1101, every college and universe in the nation is going to accept that course. Where
Adrian, was it you?
IB,
Was it you
not
or
so much
Christina?
that. So it's not a conversation in terms of, you know, pushing kids into course. We have, once again, let the data speak for itself. We have turned access completely upside down. And kids are in courses who were never even considered to be in those courses.
So-
And there's a dashboard that completely looks at, if you have these scores, you get these particular courses. So we're saying things that are a drastic misrepresentation of what's happening in schools. And all the numbers say students are having and being provided the access, they're getting the college credit, they're graduating with AAs, or will be graduating with AAs, and their pathway is drastically shift or change their lives. But
We are trying to measure when a particular specific program is offered, regardless of what it is. Like, you know, we look at end of course exams in
then say it
elementary
for-
school here.
then-
Well, we're
then
looking
say
at
it for all of the
AP,
courses. Give it to me
AP.
for dual enrollment, give it to me for
We did.
CTE, give it to me for all
Not
of
the
those
way-
things.
Well, we can do it, then we can do it all, because I think that what we're looking at is in separate indicators, because we are just looking at AP
You just said IB,
23.4%.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair.
Yeah.
That's a fair point. We would,
Untransparent, we'll give you,
All three.
any course that is an advanced
So
course.
those are the only three that fall within advanced placement, right? IB, AP,
No.
dual enrollment.
Anything that falls under, let me put my glasses on.
Industry certification.
Industry anything that qualifies, and y'all can work what this means out later. When you're looking at the acceleration component for high schools, give us the data on all of those,
Okay.
numerator, denominator, and percent. And then you could say, what Mershawn just said is, oh, you're pushing kids into the cosmetology, even though that wouldn't be one of them. But then that's the dialogue. You say, all right, you are in fact not giving the kids access to dual enrollment or IB. You're black students are only being pushed to this low-level CTE course.
And then I guess we can also, in addition to monitoring enrollment, what we are looking for this indicator was the pass rates. So we can also measure the pass rates for dual enrollment exams and everything.
If you're looking at everything as a whole, yes.
We would break it down with each one.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it'd be helpful to include the AP pass rates by course, because if you, that's pretty powerful that,
Because it is by course.
AP European History pass rate nationally is 59%. So we're not, it varies from 60% to AP US Gov is a 49% average pass rate. So it's challenging to hear that the success of a program and the success of supporting a student in a program is going to be quantified by a test that has a 40% pass rate.
Yeah, and I think that's why we want to then measure the disparity, right? Not the overall pass rate. So we wouldn't be measuring just like, okay, this is the pass rate. We would say the gap between how the black student pass rate and the white student pass rate. So you're not just looking overall at expecting 100% pass rate.
Denise, you were going to say something when we were talking.
Oh, basically, I just wanted to say, being with the trio students and high school students, I have to honestly say that with the IB program and AP courses, we actually empowered our students more so to do the dual enrollment, because AP courses, the IB program for students that were attending Sebastian River Middle, and our students had a great support system. But when students are stressed out or trying to fit in to where they really don't want to be, then that causes mental stress. And if that student wanted to continue to be in the IB program, then we helped to make sure that student had the support that they needed, and they did well. However, going back to what Dr. Moore did say, which I know because that was my job, that's what I had to do. When you get ready to go to college, those IB courses, they don't really add up to that much. It was the dual enrollment courses where those students were able to transfer, especially taking courses like ENC 1101, ENC 1102, and that's where, when we knew that students wanted to go into engineering, nursing, so we encouraged those students to take those dual enrollment courses that we knew that would be transferable. So the IB courses was not advantageous to most of the career programs that our students wanted to attend. And how we helped our students was to have them research the career that they wanted to be in and see what courses that was needed so that they could feel we had our time to be in school. Times are different now, and we have to look at the mental well-being of students, what's going on in the environment. So there are a lot of different factors that take place. So again, I'm listening, hearing all of this, but we got to come to a means of it's more than just the testing, because a lot of students have test anxiety.
That's what I said on the.
The test does not determine who, the makeup of that child.
You know, I wanted to bring it back to the fact that we have a DSEG. Within that DSEG are these programs that are already there. I hear what Denise says, but the reality of it, the school district has not lived up. Several years ago, Eric, you remember, a lot of African-American students were forced into programs. They were literally dumped. Yes, in these IBs, and it was during Dr. Warrior's tenure with me. And we asked the question, where is the support? These are the kids who get stressed out. But if there's a child who is supported and can do this, the NAACP wants them to be able to go into that program and succeed. We know that there's an ever-changing world, but we're dealing with something that is already set, and we're trying to make sure that the district is going to abide by it, work to it. We're not going to change it. You know, it's like religion. You may alter the method, but you're not going to change the message. And the message is, within the NAACP, within the desegregation order, there are certain aspects on the books that we're not getting to. And through these KPIs, and what we're trying to do is to make sure, irregardless, that these things are adhered to. That's where I sit at this table. That's where these attorneys sit at this table, to make sure that we go into a place that this district can look good and our kids, from the NAACP perspective, can get what they deserve, whether they win, lose, or draw. But the district has to do what is best, as Dr. Moore says, for all kids, and that means that if my little black boys and girls want to go into these AP and IB programs, give them the support, let them do it. Everybody's not going to win, because, as Mashawn say, I don't know why no one wants to hear her. I have white friends who tell me that their children are going to these Ivy League schools, coming out of AP and IB, especially IB programs, and taking remedial courses.
Yeah.
This is not just a black thing, but we want to make sure that these kids, our black kids, are afforded the opportunity to go into these programs and succeed. And that starts with allowing them and supporting them.
Well, I agree.
Right,
In a sense,
and
but I gotta say too, that what Dr. Smith is saying, we cannot pigeonhole students to decide their future. We only know best how to support the child and the whole child. And what comes of that, hopefully, is the child deciding exactly what field they want to do or take themselves. So I've worked with the same students. I've worked in the programs with Dr. Smith. And I think back, you know, when we talk about students excelling, we haven't really talked about the at-risk students coming out of middle school. We haven't even discussed that. Those numbers have to be nil going into high school for a student to be successful. Who's in that group, and how would they succeed coming out of middle school being at risk in reading or math? It's going to be tough. So I understand what you're saying too, Tony, and I agree. But we don't know exactly what that student desires to do until we get the whole child. Child is feeling good about themselves. They have a good home life. Everything is balanced. And then that's when we find out. So when we talk about students who struggle, many of the students that I had at Vero Beach High School struggled in many ways differently from those that might have lived in another area of Vero Beach. So I had to deal with the personal needs of those individual children. I had 704 student athletes, where I made the student athlete program somewhat of a subgroup because I had a carrot. So how did I get the first A in the history of the school? It was the students in the middle that may not have been an IB, but they were going to graduate and they were going to do great jobs for me.
Yeah.
They did that. So like I say, with what Dennis is saying right now, we just can't pigeonhole every child and assume that IB AP would be the exact weight.
But I wasn't saying pigeonhole.
Yeah,
You said
yeah,
something, you said support. Mashawn is saying it, I'm saying it. If that child is supported, Doc, you mentioned earlier, me and your conversation about algebra. I go back to a previous superintendent. He went to Sebastian River High School. He went into the IB math. It was 97% white. He went into the general math. It was 97% black and brown. This is what I'm talking about. I understand TRIO and what the good work they've done, GYAC and others, but in the school district, if these kids are prepared, I was taking trigonometry in 10th grade at an all-black school. It was preparation, it was support. Our kids are not being supported, and if they look like they're gonna waver, we shoot them over here. That's what these attorneys have gotten with us, and that's why the KPIs is to say, okay, we have, Houston, we have a problem. The data says we have a problem. How do we fix it? And I think Adrian keeps saying those kids enrolled in these programs.
So, and like you all have twisted it to make it seem like Tony and I was saying shift them to a certain program or put them in a certain program. I was responding to what Dr. Moore was saying about pushing kids out of IB and advanced placement into dual enrollment. So that's where my response came from. At the end of the day, the indicator is not even talking about enrollment. So you can, disperse children wherever you like or however you see they deserve to be or are prepared to be. All we're saying is the numbers, the indicator is there to measure the performance of the students in those programs. And we're asking that we have this indicator so it'll help us determine where support is needed.
So I
don't know how, no one is discrediting dual enrollment. No one is saying that IB is less or better. I share the experience of my friends' children who went through IB and what was it, 2, maybe 3 years ago and was not successful, struggled, needed remedial programming. And I discussed that they were white because it goes to show that these indicators will not only help black students, but also the white students who are enrolled in these programs. Because if there's support needed and most students are struggling, we'll be able to see that.
So, in God we trust, everyone else brings data. And the data will show since 2020 to almost 2024, the access for black students has drastically increased, as the data will show, and that's all we can talk about, as has their performance. My concern was you weren't capturing all of the success and only looking at 2 options. But if you're including all of them, which is the most transparent way of saying it, I'm cool. So I think we got them all. We started with 2. You have any kind of exam that leads to some kind of accreditation, you couldn't have anything else. But just to be clear, and the first time I met with Tony, some of what you said is exactly what I found to be the truth in this system. And it is a drastically better place. And there are dashboards where we look at what student is taking what course, and why is this student not being provided the opportunity? We need to go on a field trip. We need to have a next meeting in a school so we can go and see. That's not the reality today.
And I agree with
It's not completely fixed, but it is light years away from where it was.
And I agree with Dr. Moore about including all those, but again, I'm just questioning, we have to close the gap by 10 percentage points each year. Why 10 percentage? How are you figuring that one?
So we did the same thing with the 4%. We looked at the high school's performances on AP and IB, and I guess projected, in the next 3 to 5 years how it would achieve parity. I think
It was like
Vero Beach, it was like a,
50 to 20.
yeah.
Yeah, what you, the ideal data should say, as you're looking at all of them, they're all going up. Some denominators are going down,
Yeah.
and because they're going down, as Michelle was saying, the numbers are going up. When you get kids, when you get kids in the right pathway, to get wherever they gotta go, that's my job. I gotta provide an 8-lane highway to get kids to the one destination that they wanna go to.
Right.
Yeah.
And the system that was only offering 2 opportunities where the national pass rate was 59% sells all kids short. That's not,
I'll just say when I
not
was-
the offerings we have now.
As a principal, if I got 3 to 5% increase, it was good. 10% each year is,
So that's something to talk about.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would look for the 3 to 5% in all of my areas, and that wasn't always easy, but
I think we're going to have to look at,
I don't even know what the numbers are, so I can't say.
we're
it
gonna have
needs to
look
be
at
done, but I
all
don't
the
know about
different-
10%, yeah.
all the different areas, and so 10% might
That's
not be the
tough.
right number.
Yeah,
for
I don't
all
think
of
it would be, because we were only looking at AP and IB.
them. So
Okay,
let's
okay.
look at that anew
Yeah.
and see what an appropriate number would be for each
So is
section.
that going to be, is that going to be broken out into different indicators?
What we gotta go back and work on that. No, no, please, let's just keep it as one.
Okay.
The indicator that
So the district does track the dual enrollment
I
students?
track everything.
And their pass and fail rate. And did I hear these, I think when you read the IB numbers, Dr.
Well, we
Shafty,
need Dr. McMahon one night for a meeting to look at all the back end of the.
I think you said
know
for-
what I mean?
As we, no, 100%. I think when we get to how we're actually assessing
Okay.
what criteria, and like I said, 10, we'd have to go, I understand the theory of action is over X period of years, we want to reduce the gap, so since it's so big.
And I
me
think that
knowing
you
as you're
increased
dispersing kids, the
8%.
gap's
I
going to
think you
be
could
15,
increase
20.
8% each, over the past year, I think you increased 8%. And so that's why we're like, okay, 10% would get there, you increased 8% before. But, yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay.
so Dr. Shafty, let me check and see if I wrote these numbers down right. For, I think at IB, you said enrollment for white students 202, black students 27,
That was on another sheet.
That's what I
Hispanic,
had as well. Yeah.
and
That's what-
Hispanic at 122, or?
I have to go back to that dashboard.
I think that
Okay.
was, I was writing too.
So, and those are in increase over the past couple of years, at least for black student enrollment?
The count of students in IB, in one or more IB course is, I think you were right, white 202, black 27, Hispanic 127, other 14, Asian 16, for a total of 386.
Okay.
Mr. Browning, now it's a certificate program, so they're not, where they always used to have to all be in the whole IB program. So now they can, I'm not good at math, but I'll take English.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So that works for some kids.
Yes, yes. But that number has been increasing over the years? Is that what you would call an increase?
Which one? We're
Like the 27
For enrollment.
now, for
blacks
enrollment?
and
So it's
enrollment.
gone up or
in
changed down?
enrollment in,
As Dr. Shafty laid it out, not just,
access has increased,
Access
whether
has
it's,
increased.
Access.
and strategically, we've provided dual enrollment.
Yeah.
I would imagine IB numbers are very consistent than they were 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
AP is probably down in enrollment, just because, as kids say, 59% chance of passing? All I gotta do is my work, my assignments, my projects, take a test on something I studied versus over 6 months versus a year. So, but CTE courses also have drastically increased as we've expanded program offerings.
So these passing rates are those different certificate rates? So we say 53% of the white students passed, which would be 100 students passed their certificate classes. 31% of the 27 blacks would be 9 students passed. So you got 31, 9, and I don't know what the percentage passing of was the Hispanic students.
One, it was 127, and what the percentage of them passing?
So it seems to be a pretty rigorous program.
Pass rate by race.
Of the Hispanics?
was 21% of black students.
21%. Okay.
24.
24, sorry.
So Sebastian had a higher pass rate for black students with the IB program.
Mr. Browning, on the, again, this is just AP, IB pass rate combined. This is what we have on this part. Black is 56%, white is 74%.
Passing?
AP, yes, IB combined.
Okay.
We really need to come in for that. And then you can see it, because it's hard unless you know how to manage it.
Yeah, because what I wrote down probably mistakenly was only, if the white students were the most and only half of them are passing, that's a pretty,
Yeah, and this is AP, IB combined, so.
yeah, pretty rigorous test. And when they don't pass it, they have another chance to go at it? Would that be next year?
Yes, they could actually, oh, I'm sorry. I had some come in the summer, they could take it again. They have certain time. In fact, some of them will take it while they're in college because they still want to get that diploma, which helps them be exempt from freshman and sophomore classes.
Okay. And what was that CTE course you were referring to, Dr. Moore? I think you said if you go into the IB class, you'd have it look one way, and then the next door is a CTE class.
That was dual enrollment. So we have dual enrollment that's actually being taught by one of our teachers who is
Okay.
certified by
On the
the state
campus.
college on our campus.
Yeah, it's nice to have that.
How many of those do we have? 'Cause that's pretty nice, that you'd have dual enrollment
we have, I
available on
wanna think-
campus.
Bureau has a whole
In
bunch.
what classes?
Yeah, ENC 11, it's core classes, it's classes that transfer to graduation.
English 1101 or something like that?
ENC 1101, there's a history, I don't know if the course is.
College orientation class.
Well, SLI, but that's, we do the learning strategies, because orientation
Okay,
may
that's
not
right.
be applicable for, it has to be a course for us or for me that can be accepted anywhere for graduation, whether it's an elective that you have to have, or a core class.
Okay,
So-
so
Also
if
just
the IB
told
numbers
by-
are going down and the dual enrollment
It's
numbers are
going
coming
up.
up,
Ms. Baser
then
clarified
that's just a
that you
shift
can
in
only take
students
the AP
then,
test
or something.
once.
Okay.
But IB, you can take more than once.
She didn't tell me that one.
Do you,
The vibe is
Dr. Humphrey, after, will you show me where to get the dual enrollment?
It's on the same dashboard that you are on,
Yeah.
but you are hovering over
important.
course type. You can hover AP, dual enrollment, honors, IB. So the same one that you were on,
Okay, that's a,
it looks like a button. You can click and unclick those buttons.
And the next indicator, can we just provide without even talking to anybody? I'm not exactly sure what we're trying to assess there, but if we just provided the data we just discussed by male and female, does that address the desire of that indicator?
Yeah, I think so.
Indicator 5? Okay.
except for this one says, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we
Well,
could get that
what
5-year
that
district
mean?
offer.
The district will reduce the gap,
I don't,
Indicator 5, right, Doc?
right.
You can't break it down by male and female.
as we provide, it'd be a big old data table, but I think it gives you within specific programs, and I do think it's interesting where, and it goes back to Tony's point, where we're pushing students, male, female, and you may look at it and say 70% of males are in this lowest level CTE course versus X% in dual enrollment. So,
You know, and I like you saying that, Doc, because those are some of the underlying issues that are problematic to me.
yeah.
When you see it, you're gonna get the upper crust in the programs Dr. Smith was talking about. But that moderate kid,
No,
I'm just saying, more often, with a good family background and a lot of other stuff, because the kids I'm seeing out there now, they're coming out of football. They just surviving. They coming out of these different arenas. And that's why a lot of them going to college and coming right back home. I want that kid who don't qualify for her program, don't qualify for a lot of stuff, to have that same opportunity to succeed within the, not her program, but within the school district and its setup.
No, 100%, and I think the, kind of off topic, but in response to what you said, we did two things, and we pushed all kids to Algebra 1 in 8th grade, who had a 3 or above, regardless of the color of their skin, and we started doing that 3 years ago. So we actually have to increase the calculus course offerings because they need 4 maths. They need to have that 5th math in high school. We started offering bio in middle school, which is, oh my gosh, why would you do that? Because my freaking daughter had it 10 years ago. That's why. So we're going to have to add sciences, more sciences, when those kids get there in another 2 years.
I had it 20 years ago. Bio.
Where are you?
Some of the fix is giving them the prerequisites and the rigor in the courses in elementary and middle school. And from a systems perspective, we probably do elementary better than most, if not all. If you broke down the school district of Indian River County and said, we are a model district for elementary education, the data we use, how we disaggregate the scores across the board. Middle school, this year is looking really much better in terms of we've had the reactionary change this year. 2 years ago, because of the pandemic, it was behaviors were, and then now high schools, you're starting to see it, and they're getting smarter, more motivated kids. But this is, like you said, we don't fix this in a year.
Hey,
We don't fix this in 2 years.
and if you remember,
That's
when
just instruction as a whole.
I was at Middle 6 in 92, I would get all the elementaries coming to me, all of them at that time, and they say, these kids are advanced. And then they began tracking, so like, if you weren't in there going into 6th grade, so I mean, I started changing that, saying, you know, you take a look at these things, let's put them in these advanced math class. It was a whole different change. You remember that a little bit at Gifford Middle. Well, they didn't come out of 5th grade. I don't care. But that's how it was. You know, in other words, the 5th grade's determining if you're going to be in honors classes in the high school. So we're looking really hard at how to change that. And they may not be honors in all classes, but they could be in some. So I had to fight parents and teachers on that as far as, no, your kid can do that. And yes, that child's going to be in there because it will work.
And Doc, one of the things, you know, when I was with you for those 11 years, my job was to get a football player off the field and go into his mentoring, his tutoring. And during that same era, we have to be honest. Our athletes, other than Sebastian, were being stuck in classes to keep them eligible to play a game. And some of that stuff is still, you know, out there, because I'm talking to parents. And so we have to put it on the table as a reality than to say, oh, all's well. And like Doc keep referring to, I know when he and I first met, and I was throwing left jabs and right crosses, he was saying, this man crazy, but he sits now and say he wasn't crazy. Because I'm seeing it out there.
I say you crazy sometimes.
Well, I am. I'm seeing it raw and uncut.
Mm-hmm.
And Doc, you know, right there working with you, I would say, Randy would get mad at me. I say, well, fire me. If you don't want these kids to go to these classes, because football and all of this other stuff is a game.
That's right.
And I'm not in this to make anybody look good but these children.
That's right.
Amen.
So.
Let me just say this to let Mr. Brown know. TRIO works with the school district. There's students from the school district. There's students from the community. And they were students that are first generation and low income. a small, very small percentage of other students were allowed to come into the program. If you're not first generation, low income, we have students that had had a .57 GPA. Students coming into our programs having a third grade reading level. So again, going back to why we're here is having that support. We were a support system in collaboration with the school district and the college to bring those students up to a place that they were not getting into the school system. So again, our program met the needs of first-generation, low-income students, at-risk students, if you want to call them, but I don't call them at-risk, we call them at hope.
I'm sorry, what did you say? At what?
At Hope.
At hope.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So when do we meet again? So
Where are we?
Indicator 6, I think we can agree to this change. And I'm guessing Aspire is the name of the
In-school
particular
suspension
program.
program.
In school,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. So then we could agree to that as well. I think that we could also agree to indicator 8. Your
That's least
proposal.
restrictive, right?
Yeah.
Just a minute, hold on. I'm not sure I understand that. It's crossed out at the end. Exceed or maintain the district state ranking related to,
based on the size of other districts.
of greater than 50, okay. 2%. I know we've done a lot better on least restrictive, too.
But it's as good as it's possibly going to get because you have other districts that, A, smaller.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they
yeah.
don't have the programming
Right.
to meet the needs of the kids. so
Because
that
we were
otherwise-
hit on
yeah.
that years
Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
Ooh, big time. I shouldn't say that. Oh, we were, years ago.
Discern the difference between ours and theirs.
There was a program that you all had, but the school district stopped it. It was helping students, and it was very supportive. It was like a drop-in tutoring program.
Types and teens? No, no. Drop-in tutoring, where was it held?
It was held at the high schools.
Drop-in tutoring.
I'm not familiar with that.
It started with an A.
A? Do you remember what year, Denise, or was it high schools after school
Well,
hours?
it was actually during school hours.
Tutoring. I didn't have that at Sebastian, I don't think.
It was at Vero Beach High School.
Was it? Okay.
If you're going to agree to something, go ahead.
We're actually
We're
going back to
retracting.
retracting on indicator 8 because we're concerned of how
We just don't know what this,
looks like in practice.
yeah, we need to go back and look at this one again.
Indicator 8?
Yeah, with the state ranking compared to the way that it was written, what the practical impact of that change is when we look at the numbers.
Greater than, yeah, because it ends with greater or the same as 15th. No, I don't know what you mean there.
Well, also, that was, I think that's, wasn't that your change? Wasn't that your change?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't, I mean least restrictive environment, but why are you retracting, honey?
Oh, no, you guys, you changed it to state ranking. And we didn't have that. So I didn't look at that. I didn't look at that state ranking and what that, it may be the same. I don't know. I just don't know. I just don't know enough to,
I know it is ranked state. but this
So,
is restrictive.
yeah, I didn't come up with the proposed replacement language. I had a major issue with the language that was,
Before.
yeah, that was there, that was stricken, in as much as those decisions are all governed by state and federal law. And, you know, to put into anybody's mind, any of these teams that are making these decisions,
Yeah. Yeah.
that you need to be concerned about the race of the student is terribly problematic and could only lead to more litigation for my client. So we want something, because it's an issue, it's something that has to be evaluated.
what is this? Maybe you could just tell, what is the state ranking? How does the state rank you?
How does, yeah, that's,
So it looks at the percent of your least restrictive environment. So it ranks you from least to most.
So for but that's all students.
Oh, yeah, it's all
Yeah.
students.
So what it lets us do is focus on compliance with state and federal laws as it relates to students with disabilities across race, but also focusing on keeping,
Is it measured by
kids.
race? Do you measure this indicator by race?
not
I
what
don't
we
think
would be
this- I
reporting.
don't think the state does. I mean, I don't even know if we have it, which is why I questioned why it was here.
So what we're looking at, this is a measurement of everybody,
Right.
not.
I understand that.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes to what Dr. Moore said earlier, which is the only way for us to ensure that is to make sure that all kids, irrespective of race, are being put in the least restrictive environment when appropriate and lawful. And that's my concern. So we're still focusing on making sure that every kid is evaluated properly and
Right.
placed in the least restrictive environment.
Right.
But we're not making a metric where we would take into consideration the student's race when making that evaluation.
And what are we-
You don't have to take it into consideration in order to give us the data and for us to set the indicators. I get what you're saying about litigation, but you're already in litigation with this desegregation order, and it's federal law that we're trying to comply with here. So I'm not quite understanding.
Is this part, I'm trying to go back, it's been a while since these were drafted, but
Yeah.
is this part of the 2018 joint plan? I
This
mean,
is-
I think that's where,
I don't think it's part of the joint plan, it's part of our strategic plan, and
yeah.
our goal is honestly to maintain.
The joint plan talks about
Yeah.
placement of kids, and so, it's important, but to sit there and tell a district, you need to focus on the race of the student as opposed to whether or not under state and federal law they should be placed in this program or that program is problematic.
Right, we understand that you have like separate obligations under the ADA for that.
IDEA and
Yeah.
everything else, so.
I think that we took it from what you said, now I'm remembering this section 6 about assignment or placement.
I think this is one that I would like to come back on.
Yeah.
But
Agreed.
we.
Let us caucus on
yeah,
this on our side.
We
and
see your,
we'll-
we
I understand
understand.
what you're
and-
saying.
It's really two ways, several ways to look at it.
Sure.
And as Mashawn stated, defining race, we're already in a deseg order. We already in
Right,
federal
right.
court. We got a judge looking at us, and, she's making it black and white.
Right,
So-
right.
I'll
Well,
leave
the
it.
law made it black and white,
Yeah.
actually.
She
Yeah.
just making us live up to the law, and I think that, I trust our attorneys to kick it around and confer with us and see how we go. It is one that's kind of strange.
Otherwise, it looks like we're discriminating against.
I don't either.
I just gave you,
Those kids,
something.
because
That's
we're
what,
not,
Matt was saying.
yeah, we're not setting a standard, we're not addressing them.
It's crazy.
Dr. Shafty, do you have the percentage or the rate of out-of-school suspensions on the dashboard by race?
I'm sure we do internally. Just because that would be pretty intense problem solving to the student level, and we wouldn't put that
Yeah.
public facing. Because we do have it, just probably not public facing.
Because I think this was your edit on your side, by the year 23, 24. And we're saying 8 percentage points. We had originally had 10. So it's dropped to 8. I'm just wondering what those numbers actually look like, because that's one that we didn't have visibility to see. And whether that needs to be, continuing. I just don't know if that's one that's accomplished once it hits 8, or if that's an area where it needs to be continuing year after year.
ODRs are public.
She just said that data was internal.
Don't touch it. What'd you say?
Stop, Jody.
Suspension events are public.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Just don't remember.
Yeah.
Believe it, but we don't know.
Can you tell me what the number, can you just remind me? My computer died, so I don't have the dashboard open. I know, it's charging over there.
And we either have the district decrease the African American.
It's not over time publicly. So out-of-school suspension year-to-date. Count of students with 1+ OSS, white 134, Hispanic 61, black 156, 2 or more races 13, and Asian is asterisked because it's less than 10.
And just to throw this out there, that's district-wide, right? And we're approximately what percentage of this population?
District-operated schools, not charters, right?
Not charters,
18 to 20.
17 to 18.
Okay, 17.
so we're 17%, and we're 156.
But the numbers you read don't include the charters either.
No, those are,
Those would be minuscule.
that's the population of the district that the African American students are.
Sorry.
What's the overall population?
17,000.
17,000 and,
That includes
That
charters.
includes charters. We're
That's
probably
right.
just under 15,000.
Under
15,000.
15,000.
Right.
Increase in enrollment.
say 1450,
One of 2 districts in the state of Florida.
14,500?
Yes, close to 15.
That's,
So,
I think that's why it's not.
About 200, but I don't know what.
well, you right there with me, didn't you? So, Kevin, take a look at that.
Well, I'm going to tell you one, I know what they are, the increases, so.
If we're
Yeah, I think what we were looking for here, we originally had, which was crossed out, the rate. So obviously, the rate of African-American students with out-of-school suspensions is very high
I
based
think
on these
Rate
numbers.
is a, like.
Not the rate.
Like, are you
But
looking for
you understand
the?
what I'm trying to say, so what, how would you
Are
say
you
it?
looking for the, I do think that we have an opportunity to bring the right people to the table, to have the conversation that's needed to set accurate, high expectation growth. And we are trying our best to go to those departments or those people or those experts to try and get the answers. But then I think we come here and, like, I don't feel like we're accurately speaking for student services, for what the anomalies are, what it should be, what it is the right way to do it. So
What are the internal goals?
the internal,
What are the district's goals in this area?
so I can just pull up our strategic
Yeah,
plan?
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Specifically, the African-American portion of the strategic plan? We have that decrease the gap in the percentage of African American and white students assigned one or more out-of-school suspension by 8 percentage points. But this is our annual target for 23-24.
And I guess what we're trying to understand is the gap is reversed. So, can we still say it like that? Does that make sense?
What do you mean the gap is
The
reversed?
gap, so that there are more black students than white students.
Right.
And because they represent a different percentage of the population, we're trying to figure out if gap is also the right metric to measure here.
I don't know. You go back to that.
Yeah.
Numbers again on the Humber versus on the
We
white.
did it. So, at our next little convening, maybe I'll bring the data people to
Help us with that.
specifically write them out, just in terms of what those numbers would be.
Okay.
Yeah, you probably could get the gap just by multiplying, using a percentage, getting a common denominator for the percentages of white and percentages of black. So if the population is 60% white and 10% black, then we would times whatever by 6 for black to be equal to the number of white population, and then go that way with determining, because 154 for 10%, or what, 16% of the population, as opposed to 134 suspensions for what percent? What is the white population number? 54-ish.
Yeah, right around that.
So at least 3 times. And that's, I guess basically that's how they get the risk ratio, right? Kind of.
Yeah, yeah. And something measured this by risk ratio.
I mean, you just look at it, 55% white, we have 164 suspensions, 18% black, we have 188.
Or do it by the student, by the student population. I don't have the numbers y'all have, else I could do it for you real quick, but.
Yeah.
Why don't we, so it's 8:36 and we do have a hard stop because we have a driver.
You have a driver?
We have a driver.
Oh,
I mean, it sounds classier than it
Okay.
is. It's an Uber, to be clear.
your business, Joey.
Can we adjourn?
Is the same guy Ubered you up is gonna Uber you back?
No, they took the train to West Palm.
It did
Oh,
bright
yeah,
line.
yeah.
All right.
I mean, all my
Let's go off the
money.
record.
Yeah, because
We're done,
because
Mr.
Indian
Heiser.
doesn't have